Hey y'all, well it's on and it's on and it's on. We are talking about the Real Housewives of New Jersey's season 13 reunion part 1. I am here for this reunion. How about you? We are about to go ahead and break down part 1 because there is so much to cover. So go ahead and sit tight and we will be back right after this. Hey y'all, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Oh my goodness, I had just did a review of the Real Housewives of New Jersey part 1 this morning. I rewatched, well, I actually watched it originally last night and I rewatched it again this morning because it was so good. And I wanted to get out here and go ahead and do my live recap and review and chat with you. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know what you're thinking. Did you enjoy it? I mean, was it all that you wanted it to be, right? But before we get into the part 2, which actually was last night, I didn't get a chance to do part 1. So I want to go ahead and go over part 1 with you, and I will be coming back for part 2. So make sure if you have not already been subscribed to this channel that you do so you don't miss out, okay? So welcome, welcome, welcome back. But we are going to get into it. I am excited for this one. It is giving me everything that I'd hoped that it would give me. I thought it would give me, and we just moved right on into all of the important topics that needed to happen on this part 1. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so of course, I want to know. I actually did a video a couple of weeks ago, I guess now, on the looks for New Jersey, and we kind of went down and looked at all of the things that the ladies are wearing and kind of rating them and see which ones we like the best. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see that video, go ahead and make sure you go out on my platform, go ahead and take a look at that. And I would love to know your thoughts about the actual outfit, the dresses, because it was definitely one of, if not the best, I would have to say the best reunion looks for New Jersey. And Andy actually had felt the same way too. And so when he concurred with that, I was like, yeah, we're definitely on the same page for that. So I want to know your thoughts. And what did you think about the setting? As you know, definitely with all of the Real Housewives, they normally come out with some kind of a theme or location that occurred during the season, and that's what they have as their backdrop for the stage setup. So what was your thoughts on that? I thought it was pretty nice. I thought it was pretty creative, and it was supposed to be kind of like an homage to their trip to Ireland that Dolores actually put together, that was also in support and celebration of Teresa's pending nuptials. And I thought it was really nice. You know, they stayed in a really nice castle and it was just fun. I really do personally enjoy the abroad trips. And so that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I hope that you got a chance to definitely take a look at part 1 for sure. And let me know what you thought about their set, because I thought it was great. All right, so I had to write down some notes, of course, because there was just so much to cover, so many things I wanted to talk about, so many things I wanted to get your opinions about. So we're going to go right on into that, of course. And yeah, so, you know, we do the random welcomes in. Andy was very impressed with the dresses. He welcomes everybody in. It's all good and go. We're all ready, set to go. And was it just me, or did Teresa look like she was here for the end? Okay, now we have been hearing over the past few weeks before the start of the part 1 of the reunion that things were going to be pretty explosive on the reunion show. And, you know, we're talking to the point where maybe one may or may not come back. That's still up for debate. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to be curious as to how you guys feel about if you think one or the other should leave, if they both should stay and work it out, or if should they both be gone and we start over again. And I think that you may find your opinion may shift, maybe not, I don't know. You know, but it'd be interesting to see if you thought one way in the beginning and then by the end of this reunion show that you'll feel something different. So I want to know, drop those down in the comments or in the chat if you're watching in the chat. So watching the live. Okay, so of course, Teresa was ready to go, right? She was ready to go. She was balls to the wall. The bottom line is this is her moment to shine because she is not looking to have to repeat this at any other conversation with Melissa, and I would assume Joe as well, for the rest of her life, right? So Andy does open up with, asking both of the ladies, because this is such a hot button situation, which what they were thinking as far as what they wanted to get out of the reunion. And he wanted to be able to help facilitate that for them. Now, I will say this, when I'm looking at Melissa and her whole body language, I was here for it. Okay. I feel like a lot of seasons past, Melissa really tried really hard at most points. Sometimes, things took on, emotions took over, and she had to really just express herself the way she felt, whether you agreed with it or not. But a lot of times I felt she really came in with the aspect of really trying to not obliterate the relationship with Teresa, whereas I always felt Teresa was on a different path where she didn't care if it obliterated the situation. She was going to get out her points and her opinions however she thought that it was going to be. Melissa, I felt, was a little bit more guarded. That being said, I felt Melissa now this time was very just reserved and resolved to whatever was going to happen or occur throughout this episodes and the reunion itself, and was going to say whatever she needed to say. So for her, it was very clear that she wanted the truths to come out, and she wanted them to be able to have a closure to the situation in peace. For Teresa, it was basically scorched earth. I want nothing to do with them. We're moving on. We're going to get everything out. It's all coming out. And that's going to be what it's going to be, because I don't want anything else to do with them ever again. It's over. It's done. Kaput. Okay. So, of course, Teresa's not really budging, is she? She's not really leaving any room for reconciliation. In Teresa's eyes, she's had enough of reconciliation talks. I don't know if Teresa's ever been into reconciliation, but let me take that back, because that's probably not really fair to say. There has been times where Teresa has given the appearance of wanting to try to reconcile, or at least get some things together for the put them, both on the same page, at least with her and Joe, and hopefully that was going to bleed over into her and Melissa. And it just didn't work out for whatever reason or another. They always seem to go down back to square zero once they took a couple of steps up. So, it's kind of like that 2 steps forward or 3 steps forward and then, 18 steps back kind of thing. And it was really unfortunate, because there was some moments in the last few seasons, somewhere, I don't know, we're in 13 now, so maybe in 11 and 12, maybe 10, I don't know, I'd have to go back and review some of those, where there was times where it seemed like they were probably going to get back together in some form or way, at least move forward, right? And I'll be honest with you, I like it when Teresa and Melissa are getting along with Joe as well. So if I say just Melissa by herself or just Joe by herself, know that I'm meaning both Melissa and Joe, because they come as a package, right? But I appreciate when they're getting along. I love it when they're getting along. I love the family dynamic about Real Housewives of New Jersey. I don't believe there's any other Real Housewives show and franchise that does the same thing, that it comes from that same angle. Each one has a little bit of a different presentation, if you will. And one thing I have absolutely adored about Real Housewives of New Jersey is that family aspect. So from the beginning of time, when we had Caroline and Dina on and Jacqueline on, I loved it. It was fun. It was great, because we had these authentic relationships. We had these authentic conversations. And if something really was amiss, you really got that authentic emotion attached to it, and you were vested in it, right? You can relate to it. There was a rapport built within their actual display of what they were showing us. And then we had the family fun times. Like, I miss family fun times. All of the events that they would do, getting everybody together, whether it was for charity purposes or whether it was for just spending good old family time together. So I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that they had did that in the past, and I really wish they'd bring more of that back. I kind of feel like if they did do more of that, I mean, in the less contrived way as we've seen for a couple of things, this would probably help to bring them back together. I kind of feel like maybe the children are the one that's going to lead them to the future that they need, right? Because they are bombing at this. They are really, really failing at this situation. So I'm really, really hoping that things will come to grips at some point. But, I don't know. Things just went off on a tangent at that point. So, of course, now that we've got the game plan set between Melissa and Teresa, we know where they stand. Teresa is pretty much no bars, and Melissa's like, I just want everything to get out, and then we can move forward however so, but it needs to be in peace so we can move on. Because it's got to be a lot of a toll, a lot of tension, really taking a toll on them on the outside as well. Not to mention all the social media stuff that's, component that's passed on, and also them talking about it on their podcast, which may not be always the best thing to do. But, nevertheless, it's a lot going on. It's constant. And, it's just really at some point needs to stop, right? I don't know. That's just my feeling. Let me know what yours is. Okay. So then, of course, Teresa talks, starts in with the dramatics. She wants to hold Andy's hand. She wants him to see, feel my heartbeat because it's racing, it's pounding. I'm so, stressed. And I guess, Teresa is one that really leads from a feeling kind of place, right? So when she's in on all with her feelings, she wants you to understand it and see it for what it is, right? So that's the authenticity about Teresa. And I can appreciate that as long as it's authentic, okay? As long as it's legitimate to what's going on and not a dramatical element. And dramatical is probably not the right word I want to use, but it's just not, overly done for optics or whatever, because at this point we've got some things to get into. So of course, we know that Teresa says, we're done, we're closing this space. She is in namaste in it. She is doing everything she can to kind of focus and center right there on stage. And it didn't go very well. We'll just say in that part one. Now, apparently, we do then kind of shift over to Teresa being asked about her love bubble. She is still in the love bubble with Louise. That's great and wonderful. And the best thing about it, kind of like it was like your rose and your thorn element. What did you think was the greatest thing? What was the baddest thing or the worst thing? The baddest thing, the worst thing. And of course, for her, it was her love for Louis. They're in their love bubble. They're excited about being together. This is all she ever wanted. And on the other side, she's so upset about her family and how they just keep hurting her. And then how they keep on hurting Louis. Because of course, Louis's family is wonderful, but her family, well, we all know what she thinks about her family. Now, at the end of the day, Teresa is family, family, family. Right. And so there is a lot of back and forth, I'm sure, amongst many, in regards to if you agree more with Teresa or you agree more with Melissa. And I've said before, for me, I'm not team either one. I think that Teresa does good things and then does things I would prefer her not to do. And Melissa likewise. I like them both. I want them out on this show and I want them to figure it out. And I want them to show everybody and more or less show themselves that they can get through this and move forward, because I do not want to see, just like in any family structure that can be saved. Some family structures can't be saved. I feel like this one can be, unless there's something that we are totally missing. And, the nitpicky back and forth and pettiness, all that stuff, that's not real anything. What that is just stuff added upon whatever the real issue is, whatever the root issue is. And again, if the root issue is, well, I had problems with you, and so therefore I didn't want you to be on the show. I mean, we don't all get what we want, right? So why couldn't we just make this a front? And I honestly thought that Melissa and Joe could have been a help to Teresa, but some may think that maybe they were brought on there to really combat Teresa. And I can understand that if you're really a Teresa, kind of go get her to her, I can understand that if you may feel that way. I personally don't think that's necessarily what happened, because I do feel like, yes, although there's a lot of editing and a lot of heavy editing and some people get better edits than others, I do believe that does happen. I don't know. Teresa just seems like she's been pretty consistent on all platforms, no matter where we saw her, whether it was the Ultimate Girls Trip, whether it's been on reunions or the show. She's been very consistent on her feelings. So I would have to say that I feel like Teresa, when she comes there, she comes and she comes. And I don't think I've ever heard Teresa ever blame the edits on the show. I don't think she's ever done that. There's been other housewives that have done that. The bottom line is, some people say, look, they only can edit and do what they do, whatever you give them. And there's been quite a few housewives in the past who would blame the edits instead of taking responsibility and accountability. Agree with what she says, but she will take responsibility for saying them, I think, for the most part, until she gets fought out about, like when she was behind the whole hair pulling thing with Margaret. And that was a craziness, wasn't it? But, hey, that's Teresa for you. Anyways, so, yeah, we get into that. Of course, Melissa asked the question, what do you mean we're hurting you? How are we hurting Louis? And she's like, because of all things you're saying. She goes, well, really, how are we hurting Louis? Because isn't it me the one that the cheating rumors yet again come back out on this platform? So who's hurting who exactly, right? So yeah, I'm like, I'm here for that too. I want to know, like minds want to know. I want to know how he's being hurt. Because in the beginning, it seemed with Louis that he was really targeted to be a certain way. He carried himself a certain way. And then all of a sudden it just like kind of exploded. And I was kind of wondering about the timing of it all. And I also was sitting there trying to understand, why is he so upset? Like, how do you go from 1 minute of being in a position of, I want you guys to work it out, I've gone through these things, and I've talked about what Louis has shared in the special that they did for the wedding for Teresa and Louis. So if you haven't got a chance to check that video out, or that was actually a live, go ahead and check that live out. But he mentioned about some of his struggles in his family, and I thought that was admirable that he shared that, because I'm pretty sure that can help other people, right? There's so many individuals who have had to deal with family members that have challenges and substance abuse issues and all those types of things. So anytime that you can be in a position to share your truth, to share your story, and it helps someone else, I'm here for it, right? It's very hard sometimes for people to actually share about things like that, because it's very personal. It can be very hurtful. You could be currently going through it, and putting it out there for other people to see and judge is not the most pleasant thing. But if you are able to do it, I think it's very brave, and especially if the result is that you help somebody. And I think that's always a great thing. It's always a great way of doing intention when it comes to speaking about that. And that is what it's always about. It's about that intention. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it just really was unfortunate. I don't think we really got much of an answer out of Teresa in regards to that, but yet that's what was said. Now we did move on to Dina. Now this was something else that got brought up a lot in the blogs and in prior social media before the reunion. And it's about, how did Dina, and I had to ask that question as well. Were you asking that question? Let me know if you were curious about why Dina wasn't in the wedding before we ended up hearing why she was not in the wedding. Because I thought that Dina and Teresa were very, very tight, even with the situation between Teresa and Caroline. It didn't seem to affect the relationship in a negative way, as far as I knew, with Dina, because Dina was like the godmother to our Adriana, which is Teresa's youngest. And I mean, there was just so much love between the two of them. So I thought that, hey, that they were going to be able to weather that storm. And I thought that they were. So I was surprised to see that on this very big day, which this was a huge day for Teresa, that Dina would not be here. Now, I know Dina is not interested in being on the show, but they would have worked it out. I think that was mentioned at some point, that they would have worked it out where Dina wouldn't have to be on camera. That wasn't necessary. There's tons of people who were not, on camera for the wedding. And so therefore I think that they definitely could have accommodated that. Now, of course, Teresa was okay with the fact that Dina pulled out. She said, she didn't want anyone to know that she was in town, because you all know about the very problematic and sad situation that Dina had went through a few years back. Now, in regards with her ex-husband and some other stuff. So, but she didn't really want to have her, be out there. And so at that point, Teresa was like, it's okay. I wish you would have told me sooner, but I understood. I'm not upset about it. It was at that point, right, that Teresa ends up making Jennifer Aiden and Dolores bridesmaids. But of course, we all know about the continued fight as far as Melissa being a bridesmaid. And it was just such a mess. But that's kind of what was the opening to those two actually being a part of the bridesmaids area. Now, I kind of think Dolores would have already been a bridesmaid, if I'm not mistaken. I think she would, because Dolores and Teresa go way, way, way back. But I think Jennifer Aiden probably was the one that, got the picked up role because of Dina not being around. And of course, Bill ends up, being one of the groomsmen, of course, because it's always nice to do the coupling thing when you can. And that's what happened there. And, there was also something Andy had mentioned, and that was Teresa and, we saw this on social media. So Teresa and Dina and Dina's new husband, David, and Louis were hanging out, right? They were going out, getting together, showing on social media, and just really seemed like they were just really were having a budding coupling relationship. And then all of a sudden, those pics stopped, those posts stopped. Apparently, they're not seeing them anymore. So Andy questioned Teresa about that. And at this point, Teresa's like, no, everything is okay, because Andy asks, is everything good? And she says, yeah, of course. Now with Teresa, you're not going to always get everything with Teresa, right? Sometimes it's always good. Everything's great. Everything's happy. Even when it's not. And but that's okay. Sometimes you don't need to share everything. But she says everything's good, they're fine, no problem. And then Teresa puts out there, and David and Louis did not have any business dealings with each other. So I was like, because we didn't even bring up about business dealings, right? No business dealings was discussed at that point, but it gave a nice opening for Melissa to slide right on in there. And then before we got into Melissa sliding on in there, we do a little bit of a click back, right? Because Andy says, well, Joe, I believe, did mention that there was some bit of a falling out, some kind of a dispute between Louis and David. And of course, Teresa was like, no, there was no dispute. No, there was no issue. No. Look, Teresa is a vault. And if she's not interested in telling you what's really going on, she's not going to. Or is it that Teresa just in her mind thinks that's what the situation is and that's what you're seeing? I don't know. You tell me. Drop it in the comment section there. Well, so she says, there was no issues there. Then we see about the flashbacks where Joe says, what about Pizzagate Part 2, right? Yeah. So in other words, David apparently, this is all alleged, right? And this is according to Joe and what they showed in the clip, okay? That apparently that they did have some type of business dealing. It fell through. And then yet again, this is another relationship that Louis has now destroyed of Teresa's, which is really sad if that's actually true. Don't really know. If you guys know anything more about that on the back end, go ahead and drop that down. I would like to know your thoughts about that. Do you think that's actually what went down? Who knows, right? Who knows? But that's what Joe was saying. Now, Melissa does slide in on there and says, look, at the end of the day, David, being Dina's husband, did not want to be on the show. So Joe didn't have a right. He did step over the bounds and bringing that conversation up that them two had. She said they did have a conversation, but he overstepped and he should not have said it on the show. Fair enough. And at the end of the day, that is what it is, right? Does Melissa know anymore? I don't know. Melissa didn't really, elaborate on that. But yeah, she did say that was something that shouldn't have been brought up, and that was that. Then we move on to Dina. I think, is it Dina? No, Donna. It's Donna, Melissa's mother. And apparently it was shared on the show that it's an Italian tradition that the in-laws are invited to the weddings, right? I mean, they're part of the family, so why not? Well, of course, as we all know, famously, Teresa did not invite Donna, which is the mother-in-law of Melissa, her mother-in-law, Melissa's mother, and Joe's mother-in-law. It's not her mother-in-law, I'm sorry. It's Joe's mother-in-law, Melissa's mother. Now, we also know Melissa has, I think, two sisters, if I'm remembering correctly. We haven't seen them in quite some time, but that she's had a couple of sisters as well. So, Teresa kind of went back and forth on the reasons why she did not have them invited. On the show, she didn't have them invited because, and this is what we court back to, right? A past clip where she says that because they've got history, right? They've had issues, right? And there was conversation about those issues on Watch What Happens Live as well. There were some previous episodes, and I believe Teresa was on this Watch What Happens Live, where she was talking about, I believe it was her, not Melissa, about Melissa probably was on one too, but never mind. It was on Watch What Happens Live as well. And if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about, where she expresses about that there was, a bunch of social media posts going back and forth. I mean, really, honestly, this whole taking out your family situation on social media is just really, it's just sad. But in any event, I guess there was things that were being said that, Melissa was saying that Teresa would say things or maybe like things that other people would say that would be negative towards Melissa. And then, of course, being Melissa's mother, she's on there as well, and she says what she has to say because she's defending her daughter. And whether it's a quick comment or not, or like to something else opposite of Teresa, this is part of what Teresa uses as support for not inviting Donna to the wedding. I don't think that's necessarily what it was, but that's what she was giving. That's in the flashback. But then on the part one recap session, she's then sharing that, well, I didn't really want to have to invite Donna if I couldn't invite the sisters. And so they just really weren't on my mind. So that's just how that went down. And that seemed like kind of a weak statement to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure she had enough room for, did you see the food at that reception? I mean, my goodness, they had enough room and enough time. The wedding was outside. There's nothing to add two more chairs to the back, and it would have been fine, right? But, Teresa's holding her ground. It's her wedding. She can do what she wants, right? Louis doesn't want anything to do with them either. So therefore, they're not going to be bringing them on, and that's fine. It's their wedding. It is what it is. But of course, Melissa makes sure she chimes in and says, it's so funny. When you don't want us, you don't want us. When you want us, and you want us. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Well, look, you wanted them, and you really want them to be available when you want to show Louis some family. But as soon as was not needed, then, it's like, off with you. You can go and do whatever you do, kick rocks, all right? And of course, Teresa's denying this left and right. And, nobody's really going anywhere with this. But that's basically how that was set up. Then we are moving on to the fact, which I think there was, Teresa does a good job at redirecting questions, right? When it gets a little bit hot or she doesn't really want to go further into it, because trust and believe, when Teresa wants to go into a particular situation, she will go in. But I feel like I've seen her enough that if she feels uncomfortable about a conversation, she doesn't really want to go any further, she's going to redirect it to somewhere else. So somehow out of the blue, we are redirecting to the fact that they did not ask her to go out and do anything, because it's all about family, right? When Joe was in prison, for the time that he was in prison. Now, Melissa's like, that is not true, right? And of course, Teresa's hyped up, but at the end of the day, Melissa comes with the receipt. And look, it's 1,000 words in a picture. And there were several pictures that were able to be presented showing Teresa hanging out with them and friends and all that kind of stuff. At this point, and this is what she has, she says, I can think of a number of other events and situations in which we invited her to come out and to be with us and do all of that. But, Teresa's like not having it. She's not agreeing with that. And therefore, as and the illustrious words of Lala, she is rejecting that. At the end of the day, it's didn't happen. Okay. And she mentioned even when they specifically talked about a particular time, apparently she says, well, that was just that one time. And then, hey, I had to invite myself sometimes too. So, I mean, look, it's a he said, she said situation. I guess, again, I go with the pictures. Clearly they did go out. They had a good time. I mean, Melissa says, hey, we did invite you. We did bring you out. And Teresa says, no, it didn't happen. So where do you go from here, right? I mean, it's too bad we can't go back in time and be like a fly on the wall and actually see how that exchange went. So we can come back and say, yes, emphatically, Teresa, you were wrong. But we don't have that, right? So we have to go with what sounds the most logical. And in my opinion, I think Melissa did invite Teresa out. I don't know necessarily if Teresa always went out every time Melissa invited her out. And maybe there could have been a situation where she was inviting her out and, she felt maybe it was for the show, or she really wasn't that interested and she decided not to. And so that gets all muddled up into things, but we're talking years ago now, right? But, again, this is what Teresa does at times. She likes to deflect. She likes to redirect situations when she's hitting the hot seat with a question, right? It happens. We all do it at times. Then at this point, Melissa is talking about, that. And then we flipped onto the fact that, we're getting deeper into the beginning stages of Louis and Teresa's relationship, because I believe Andy did share about, it seemed like in the beginning, Teresa and Louis and Melissa and Joe and all of them, they were really cool, right? They were really hanging out, and Joe seemed to be really, he liked Louis. And I remember that they talked about, they seemed to like him, and that didn't last more than an episode or two in the beginning. But yeah, they seemed to really like him. And of course, Teresa's feeling that was for probably a storyline, and that, she blamed Joe for wanting to bring Louis out onto the show. She really didn't want to do that. I did hear a bit in the past about that, Teresa was kind of biding her time on how she was going to bring him out. But at the end of the day, look, Teresa was going to have him out. So whether she did it a little bit later or a little bit earlier or whatever the case, it was going to happen. I mean, I think she had pretty much settled on the fact that Louis is going to be her forever after, and therefore he would need to be part of the show, right? I know that there was some conversation where she didn't want to kind of push him into it. This wasn't his life, but I think that was just for him to, get an opportunity to take care of some things that he needed to take care of. Because as we all remember, season before, there's a lot of stuff that came out about Louis, right? A lot of questionable things that came out. It became quite the fodder for the cast to talk about and discuss. And it didn't always make Louis look like he was in a good light, or sometimes it really wasn't that big of a deal, but it got blown up into a big deal. So, yeah, that's what she was saying there. Now, Teresa says, yeah, we were all cool, but, things just change. When she needs us, she needs us. When she don't, she don't. Now, of Louis and Teresa. And matter of fact, she said that Louis knew who Teresa was. Now, Teresa says, no, he didn't really know who she was before. But she said, yeah, she was aware of you. And even further, tea dropped. And I don't know if Teresa knew about this, heard about this. I don't know if there's a discussion had, but boy, that's not the time or the place for, I would say that she'd want to hear that news, whether it's true or not. But, I think that is true. I don't see why Melissa would lie about it. It's easy to refute. If Alexia doesn't want to come out and say anything, then she doesn't have to, but she did get thrown in the mix. And I wonder if Melissa may have talked to Alexia first and said, look, I'm going to bring this up, or if it just came out and, we'll see what happens. But she basically says that when they were on the Real Housewives of the Ultimate Girls Trip, right, that apparently Louis was telling Joe, hey, wouldn't it be so cool if we would fly over there to Turks and Caicos? That's when Melissa and Teresa was on the first girls trip, and and just go and surprise them. So the thing that Teresa was trying to say is that Louis was not really about being on TV. Melissa saying yes, he was, and here's the reasons why. One was that, and two was that he was actually interested in Alexia before he got with you, before he met you. And Alexia is one of the cast members on Real Housewives of Miami, and apparently he wanted to go out and date her. So, and for whatever reason that didn't work out, I guess, or didn't happen, didn't take off, whatever the case may be. I have no idea. I don't know much about Alexia, and I don't watch Real Housewives of Miami, but I did say I may start next season. But yeah, that set off Teresa. Of course, Teresa's like, you're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar. I mean, look, Melissa's been called a liar so many times. I'm pretty sure she probably thinks that's the name she should be answering to. But that's what is basically happened there. And Melissa says, look, at the end of the day, this is getting tired. Okay, this is getting old. You need to come up with another scheme. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't keep telling everybody's lying and lying when we say something that you don't like. I mean, I'm ad-libbing a little bit there, but that's basically what she's saying. So Teresa was not standing for it. She says, look, we're about to get this all out. She's upset at this point. She's like, yeah, I've had enough of her. And at the end of the day, we need to get this all out because you're going to be gone. And she's like, really? Or she's not going to see her face again or something to that effect. She's like, really? You're not going to see my face again? How's that going to happen? Because you're going to be gone. That was news to everybody. Right. Andy looked and said, I wasn't aware of Melissa and Joe leaving. Well, Teresa said it so that means it's what's going to be. And that's what Melissa quirks back. But yeah, so she's like, okay, well, hey, I got a couple hours, so we might as well go ahead and get everything out then, let's get all this truth out. Let's get out all this tea. At the end of the day, Teresa says, look, I don't know how we're going to coexist. Yeah, look, she's tired of coexisting the way she's been for the last 10 years. And I think Teresa at this point, irregardless if Teresa will ever own up to any accountability to the situation as it is with her sister and brother, she wants so far to move away from that situation that at this point, it doesn't matter. If it resolves, it revolves. If it don't, she doesn't care. She wants to move on. She wants to start a new chapter. I think she also wants to start a new chapter with Louis on the show. I think that they don't want this to drag on. But as we all know, for us Real Housewives lovers who still watch the shows and still enjoy them and have for so many years, we all know that nothing ever stays in the season before. It always gets dragged to the next season. Even the stupid stuff that we don't want to hear anymore about. Some things get dragged to so far down the drain that you cannot take it anymore. I think at this point about Real Housewives of Beverly Hills with that whole Lucy Applegate, whatever, Lucy something goosey, the little puppy thing, that was ridiculous. That was one of the most benign stories I could not take it anymore. Not one more episode about that situation. And this is what sometimes, unfortunately, some of these shows go to. Same thing with Real Housewives of Potomac. I absolutely love Potomac, but here's an unpopular opinion. I think for the most part, I want Monique to sashay herself right back over into the show. She probably never going to come back to the show, right? She feels how she feels, and I understand that. But she's good for TV. Her family's good for TV. I love a functioning family unit. Whatever, all that other stuff, they seem to really kind of band together. Now, I know they probably have some issues and some issues, within the marriage. This happens. That's what happens in a marriage. I mean, give me a break. We don't always get along all the time, right? But they were a unit, and I loved them together. And it wasn't all this extra stuff about the personal lives that I'm not interested in. Like, I really want her back, and Mia can be gone. I'm sorry. Mia's got a lot of stuff going on. And I think if Mia did not put me off so much as she did in the beginning, maybe I would be more interested in about her come up or come back, if you will, from the situation they're in right now. But we're not going to go too much deeper into Potomac. But I'm just saying, this is the kind of stupid storylines that you see over and over again. And, you just get so tired of it. And at the end of the day, Teresa's not going to get the opportunity that I'm sure she would like to have with her and Louise being able to have a fresh start with just their only things. They're going to have to deal with the situation before. That's just the way it is. That's life. That's how it is. But, some of us like to close doors on things and think it's never going to exist again. I think that the sadness about the situation is that the children are hurting just as much as the adults are. And, there's truly issues there, and they just need to find a way to come together. And people look, time is not promised to us. Life is too short, and they are too old for this. So there we go. So, oh my goodness, where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? And that's probably what Andy was thinking too. Where do we go from here? He's thinking about this on this front. Is Teresa really going to chill out, or she's going to keep going? But at the end of the day, that's how she finals that segment. And then we flip into, no pun intended, we flip into Teresa's hair. Of course, that debuted itself on her wedding. It was high, it was tall. She thought it was closer to God. The higher it is, the closer to God she is, and that's great. And it was beautiful. I mentioned my thoughts about the wedding attire and all that good stuff. I think she looked gorgeous. It fits her. She could pull it off. Okay, she had 1,500 pins, she mentioned, in her hair. It took a little bit of time, I think about 2.5 hours or something like that, to put it together, but it was nice, and it works. And look, Teresa, it fit. She could do it. She could pull it off. Not everybody can do that. And she did. But at the time, this leads us into how Margaret, if you had saw the wedding special, how Margaret was crying so much. Wasn't that funny? Margaret was she was so emotional about the wedding, and I did not expect that. But I like Margaret. I know some people may not be too crazy about her, but I think Margaret is cool. And, at the end of the day, look, Teresa was behind that whole hair pulling thing with Danielle. So she has a right to feel whatever she feels, but she's trying to really have a relationship with Teresa. She really is trying. But, at the end of the day, that's what's going on, right? And so we see that she's crying. She's, very, very sensitive about what's going on. The wedding is beautiful. And one of the things that speaks out to her is the fact that Teresa had to walk herself down the aisle. And so we all know that Teresa lost her parents. Teresa and Joe lost their parents. And that is so sad and so devastating. It's giving me chills right now, because one of the things that makes me so sad about the sibling situation is they just only have each other, right? And I need the spouses to step aside and allow them to get together and talk. And then everything nucleus is out from them into everybody else, right? I just had a moment there, because at the end of the day, it's just so sad to me that they cannot get this together, and they need to get it together. And maybe they don't need to, I don't know, but that just made me sad, because at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure her parents would love for them to reconcile, right? Who would not want their children reconciled if they're only two siblings? There's nobody else. It's just them and their kids, right? But they're the patriarchs and the monarchs, or matriarchs, excuse me, monarchs, going into England, or, well, England's not the only one with a monarchy, right? Yeah, but this is what I thought about. Anyway, so they're the patriarchs and the matriarchs, and it just makes me so sad for them. It really does. It breaks my heart, because I want to see them together and having a good time. I want to see the cookouts. I want to see the family fun. I want to see her girls with her new stepsons and the cousins, from Joe and Melissa. I want them all together, and that's just what I want. So, but in the world, we can't have everything we want. But anywho, so we are going into getting deeper into the situation with Melissa, or not Melissa, excuse me, Margaret, because we know that Margaret left the wedding early. If you watch the special, she left the wedding early. Now, my thoughts on that, and I shared that in my last live, and that is that I think that Margaret should have stayed. But now we find out a little bit more, I think, is the reason why Margaret left at the time, and maybe this is what she only knew at the time of the wedding, is that there was so much dissension with Melissa, and she felt so bad about the fact that Melissa and Joe were not at that wedding, that she did not feel that it was right for her to be able to continue partying on, if you will, in the reception, without them being there. She wanted to show her support for Teresa. This is what happens when you're on the, in the neutral zone, right? Sometimes you have to make a choice, but she thought that if she went to the wedding and she was there and she represented in her full authentic self, it was a way of supporting Teresa. And it was, all right. Teresa was happy about the fact that she was there. Teresa even said, I guess either she knew about the crying or just how the emotional Margaret was, or she just was happy the fact that Margaret was there and she wanted to talk to Margaret. And, by that time, I guess she had an opportunity because it was a beautiful spread. I'm telling you now, Teresa, there was a great wedding. Margaret had already left. But Margaret was talking about that. What we now find out is that, no, I don't think that's all that the situation was. It may not have been what the situation was at all. It may have just been what the icing was on the cake. But that apparently we're talking about private investigators now, okay? That's where she has an issue. And we're going to go a little bit more into that because it delves down a little bit more into part 2. And I want you to come back for part 2 because we're going to discuss that as well. But yeah, so at the end of the day, that's part of what was going on there, right? That was part of the issue there. And, it was mentioned about when Margaret started to talk about, things that had happened. She had saw things that happened behind the scene that she obviously wasn't aware of at the time. And then Danielle corps in, hey, look, she has nothing to do with it, right? Teresa has nothing to do with it. Why are you blaming her, right? She has nothing to do with it. She's like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that part. So we know something's coming up. And that is also another good thing about Real Housewives of New Jersey. They are really good with adding the extras that we don't get to see. And they bring it to the reunion and it is juicy. And I love it all. Anyways, so it's kind of like the book vibes that Monique did. Yeah, with her receipts, best receipt giver ever. But, we still have more time to go. But that was mine. She's my number one. And there's quite a few people that, fit in that list within the first 5 or 10 or whatever. But Monique Samuels, boy, that binder was everything. Anyway, so, after she says that, Danielle, I said, jumps in. And then we're talking about, what was it called? Bo Diddle, right? Because then we're curving back. Yeah, I'm only interested in Bo Diddle and Deedle D and Dweedle Dum. And I would like to know who you think she was talking about, the Deedle D and Deedle Dum. Which one was which? Teresa or Louie, right? Like crazy. But what she says is that's what she's into. Now, Andy's like, whoa, hold the horses. We're going to get back to that. We're going to talk about that later. She's, yeah, we are going to talk about that. So we move on from that conversation and we go ahead and, we go see Dolores. We move the dial over just a little bit. And that's Dolores, how she's doing. Dolores is in her bubble as well. Love bubble. I don't think I've seen Dolores as happy as she is now currently. So much happy that I think she's slightly delirious in some of her responses, asking, things about Teresa and things that Teresa said and done. And I'm sitting like, Dolores, what are you talking about? Dolores is one of my favorites on the show. I like a person who can be kind of an in-between. And when I say in-between, I mean, doesn't always have to cause or bring the drama. I like a voice of reason. And I think that Dolores is that most times. But I don't know. I was looking at Dolores a little bit sideways a couple of times where she was kind of jumping in, I guess, in a way on Teresa's side. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think that Teresa, this is not making the best point. But, it is what it is. They have this long relationship and whatever. So Dolores is very happy. She is so happy with Paul or Paulie, and they're happy together. I think Paulie did a great first season. I know in the beginning was a little rough and rocky because, hey, look, he wasn't interested in butting out with Frank, and I like Frank Katana. I think Frank is great. I think he's great for the show. I'm glad he's still on. It's a little bit different, right? We don't really have an ex-husband hanging out with them as if he's just part of the family because he is on any other franchise, and that's what I'm talking about. That is the things that I love about Real Housewives Wives of New Jersey. That family situation. There is, even though it didn't work out in their marriage, they were there for the kids. And, Frank, he wasn't the best husband, right? That's why he's landed in that spot. But, he definitely has love and I think regret for the way he treated Dolores. He has love for Dolores. He had shared that. He shared his feelings about that. And, it is what it is. Dolores wants to keep that relationship. The kids are happy. Everybody's happy, and everybody's going on. For heaven's sakes, Dolores is still cool with her ex David. You remember David? Yeah, the one that she barely had a relationship with. It was like kind of felt like it was a name only, right? They did not share their lives together. He was a great doctor. I think it was a plastic surgeon. He was great at it, whatever he did. He's helped her mother out. So he was a really, really good friend, right? He was a good person to have. And they still are in each other's lives to a degree, I think. I think he's closer with Frank because apparently Frank and him are still living together. And of course, Dolores says, look, Frank is the one that built the house. Andy says, look, someone built my house too, but they ain't living with me. But, they have this interesting bro what do you call that? Bromance going on, I guess. And, at the end of the day, it works. And it's so crazy, but it works. And I think Frank definitely thought he would have the same kind of relationship as he has with David, with Polly. Polly ain't here for her. Polly's like, nah, I don't think so. This is my girl, and I'm her number one. She's my number one. And we are the ones that are going to be having this relationship. This is not going to be a 3-year relationship. And so it took Frank a little bit of time to get, used to that. He may still not be used to it, but I think Frank is struggling or was struggling, but he's really trying to come to grips with it because at the end of the day, Paulie is right. He's right. At the end of the day, if there is going to be a real relationship here, then the focus needs to be have the kind of connection she had Frank and continued on because she really didn't have one with David. And didn't we all go for a long period of time saying, hey, look, maybe, Dolores and Frank should take another look at each other again. It didn't happen, but at the end of the day, we all were thinking that, right? I know I was thinking it. I was thinking like, maybe they can work it out. It's been a lot of years. They've been divorced for quite some time. The kids are great and they love their parents. And I think they would be supportive either way. I mean, it is what it is, right? So that being said, we go into further about that relationship and how Dolores is fine with David and Frank hanging out. I think, what's his name? Brittany, I think, which is Frank's girlfriend. She comes over, hangs out too. She says, look, I don't know about how that arrangement goes, but at the end of the day, I love them, and I like that relationship too. The fact that Brittany and Dolores can hang out too, I think that's pretty cool. I think that's cool, right? It doesn't happen very often, so I think it's good. And, Dolores is just happy. And it shows in everything, really. It just shows how excited she is about that situation. Now, there was a point that they had went back into the past a little bit, right? If you remember in the season that apparently Paulie had, I think it was Frank had shared about, hey, look, when are you going to get a ring on that? And I think he was maybe playing or jabbing just a little bit, wanted to check in on see it. Paulie said, hey, look at here. I got the ring. But of course, Dolores thinks that he was just joshing about the situation, or as the term they call it in what was that term? Let me see. Yeah, because I got my notes. That they were slagging off, basically just kidding, right? Just kind of getting his goat a little bit. And so that was kind of fun. Anyways. So that's where we're left on that point there. But then Andy asks about, because apparently Paulie was married before. Okay. And so he asked about the divorce, how long he's been divorced. And then Dolores lets us all know he's not divorced. Now, I think there was a little bit of rumblings about that before the reunion started, but I don't think we knew per se on any grand stage about this until the reunion hit, or until the reunion was upon us or coming upon us. And she says, look, Paulie and his wife, they've been separated for 14 years. He never really thought much to get divorced because he never thought he would ever get remarried until now. So now him and Dolores are building a life together. That's part of the reason why Dolores is so happy with him. That's why she is enjoying her time with him. And at the end of the day, she's here for it. I think I heard somewhere they might be looking for a home together, although I like Paulie's house. But, I think that it's time for them to find something to nest together. But at the end of the day, he does need to close up whatever the past situation is before he can fully move on and move forward with Dolores. And I honestly, personally, would feel better, just me anyways, would feel better if when he does do the ring and the whole engagement thing, that he's already divorced, not in the process of, but already in divorce, and then do it. It's just cleaner that way, but hey, what do I know? I know a lot on that. At least opinion wise. And so yeah, but she said, look, at the end of the day, it's gonna happen. So I guess stay tuned, right? We've got many more seasons to go. I don't see Dolores going anywhere. I would love to see her again next season. Like I said, Dolores is one of my favorites. And now we get to see Dolores in a happy situation and what comes from that. So yeah, and if we can get another wedding, I'm here for that too, right? I love weddings. Weddings are fun. Anyways, so we end off with that and we move on to Miss Danielle. And, of course, getting to know Danielle. Danielle is one of the new housewives along with Rachel on this season. And for my pick on how I feel is I really like Rachel. I really liked them both in the beginning. I really liked Danielle. I thought Danielle was fun and, she was kind of no nonsense and I can appreciate it. And then it went too far. And I think that as far as I'm concerned, that whole argument that her and Rachel had about what she was sharing with Rachel, that Laura, Margaret's ex friend, was sending rumors about, because I guess Laura couldn't get on the show, so she's going to find a way to get herself on the show. And so there's a lot of centering around Laura. And apparently one of the many things that Laura had shared was that Margaret had an arsenal of things to shed all kinds of stuff on people and all that good stuff. So of course, Rachel was not here for that, and she had mentioned it to the other ladies, and then it got blown out into a situation that Rachel had made it bigger than what it was. And I guess Danielle took it on her, the fact that she felt that she was saying that Danielle was the one that said it, but she was like, no, clarifying it was Laura that said it. And I mean, at the end of the day, it was a stupid argument. Andy said it was a dumb argument. I thought it was a dumb argument. I thought it was very contrived. I thought it was a way for Danielle to have an issue with the new person. And that was very reminiscent of Margaret and, Margaret, I think, came before Jennifer Aiden, right? But Jennifer Aiden and Jackie, their issue, right? They didn't care for each other. They started off as cool, and then, Jackie did some blog about, parenting or something like that, and that threw that whole entire friendship into chaos. But then also Margaret was relatively new too. I think she was in her second season at this point. And her and Jennifer Aiden were going at it like left and right, center, and they just not get along. And I kind of felt like Danielle was looking for that kind of moment with Rachel. I think she came into the situation, maybe she heard that this was how it was going to be, but that she felt like, look, if one of us is going to be standing, I want it to be me. Okay. And I prefer Rachel and Danielle as friends. I prefer them being cool with each other. And so did Andy. And I think that surprised Danielle. I think that in a way, and this is my opinion, but I think in a way that Danielle was thinking that that this was going to pan out differently than what it did. And that people would be more on her side for what she said, and that they would be cool with it and wouldn't have any problems with it. And when it kind of came out like we preferred you actually getting along, then it kind of sucked that energy out of that situation. Like, yeah. So Danielle was pretty quick to kind of let things go. I know she did try to, do a couple of last gasps by saying, it hurt my feelings, what was said, how it was said. Yeah. It was a dumb situation. Maybe she said a couple of extra words. I don't know. Did she accent a few words? I don't know. I don't think she made it sound more than what it was. I think they wanted to make it like it was more than what it was. I think Jennifer Aiden's 2 cents being brought in, which most of the time her bringing her 2 cents in usually doesn't end well for anyone. And I just think it was all blown out of proportion. They decided to call it a truce. We're not going much further into that. I bet she wants to move on. They're moving on, and that's that. Now, one of the things I found that was important is that, Danielle did talk about her brother, the estrangement between her and her brother. We know that's one of the major sticking points in the storyline for Danielle. Now, of course, all of us would love to see Danielle and her brother get back together, have a reconciliation, but we don't know all things that are going on there. Danielle will have us to believe that it had to do with being blocked on Instagram, meaning her brother being blocked on Instagram, because apparently she was on Instagram during when the world was all shut down, and she was doing pics and stuff for her on Instagram, and her brother had basically was making fun of her. So she thought, you making fun of me? Okay, I'm gonna block you. He says, what, you blocked me? She said, yeah, I blocked you. He said, well, then you're out of my life. And literally she's been out of his life. I personally, I'm sorry. I don't believe that's what happened. I think that might have been the last straw. And I mean the very last straw, like a piece of the straw. But it was not what happened. It's not the reason why they are not cool. I think somebody said something they had no business saying. I think someone probably overstepped on some bounds. Maybe somebody said some things that they probably wish they could take back, and it was not setting well. There's also a wife involved here. Why do I feel like Danielle and some of her zest of how her family connection and all that stuff is? That maybe she didn't say a couple of things that rubbed the wife wrong and didn't expect that her brother would take his wife's position and take his not only position but support his wife, which is what you're supposed to do. Okay, your family's not supposed to walk over your relationship. You're not supposed to allow your family to let them walk over your relationship. You can have an opinion if you want, but there's such thing as respect. And just because you were the family does not mean you can come in and tell the new person who that sibling or whoever family member has chosen what they need to be doing or how they need to be doing or criticizing them. That is out. That is played. That is done. It should have never been an issue in the first place. And I'm so proud of people who wake up to that fact and know that I don't have to put up with that. No, in my opinion, sorry. You do not marry the family. You marry the person that you were with. That is just what it is. If you give me respect, I give you respect back. Now, I'm not going to come out popping off and acting a fool just because I'm looking to, kind of put you on edge. At the end of the day, if you're coming at me and you're kind of sweetheart, I have no reason other than to be the same to you. And I don't know why, but I feel like there's some vibe of that involved. And I think that Danielle might have said a little something and then pulled away from that. I just have to go back into the season to pull out what exactly it was that she said, but it's something that gives me a vibe about that. That is my opinion. I know some people don't feel that way. Some people feel like you have to love my family. My family is going to be all in our business and they're going to tell me how to do blah, 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 blah. I don't believe in that. I think once you get married, you then assume another position. Otherwise, stay single. Okay. Stay single. Stop getting with people who have your same goals and ideals in mind. And the world will be a better place, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. So that's what we think that it's more going on. That's why people keep questioning it. That's why people are not believing that it's just about that Instagram post. It just doesn't make sense that just because your family member is doing something on Instagram that you don't like, that you're going to block them and they're going to tell you, well, you're out of my life. I just don't think that's what happened there. I don't think that was the main cause. It may have been what was the straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe we were looking for something to kind of sever that situation, so I could just in my mind be like, I'm done. Nevertheless, I think there's more to the story. Maybe we'll hear more. Maybe we won't. We don't know. Danielle does share that from part one that I think it was the next day or that day, maybe later that day or something like that. I don't know. That day, but in any event, her grandmother had passed away. So condolences to her and her family about that. That is very sad and very devastating, right? When you lose a family member, that is devastating. So condolences to Danielle and her family. And at the end of the day, of course, it is nice that her brother's going to come for that, right? And be there for that. But that's the reason as to why they're going to be seeing each other again. At first, I kind of felt when it was opened up that at the very beginning was like kind of like, oh, they're going to just see each other. It really isn't that they're going to see each other in a sense of like to reconcile and talk. I don't think that's not, let's just say that's not the intent, right? It's there to pay their respects and be there and in celebration for the grandmother and in the morning of that and all of that being with the family. So it's going to be tense, I'm sure. It's going to be really tense or has been really tense because it's now been a couple of weeks, right? If it is an opening for Danielle to talk to her brother, I hope that, that is something that could have come out of it. I don't necessarily keep my hopes up on that too much though, because I kind of think that may not happen there. It's not the time. It's not the focus. The focus is paying the respects to her grandmother, right? And I'm pretty sure Danielle feels the same way. If it happens, it happens. But the number one is to be there for, the other family members as well and just being there in that moment. But it's really sad and it's very hurtful and Danielle's hurt and I can see it. I think it's authentic. I think that, she may say something to the fact that she could be a little extra and yeah, Danielle can be, but I think Danielle has a good heart. I really do. You see it with how she interacts with those that she feels passionate about and loves and stuff. And sometimes you got to reel in that situation. She talks about the fact that she was bullied back in the day when she was a kid and stuff. And so I think that that's part of, kind of that overcompensating. And, sometimes I can get you into trouble, because you have your voice, you found your voice, you want to use your voice, and that's what you're supposed to do. But you also got to meter your voice as well at times. And I mean, no one has to hear everything all at one time, all the time. So, and all the extraness, So, I hope that they do find a way to get back together, to reconcile in that family. I'm sure it would be a great relief to her parents because they both are very invested in them getting back to a place of reconciliation as well. The father, I remember within the season, had shared how sad he was and that he wanted his family back together. So, we'll see what happens there. Her mother also too was like, we just got to wait it out, and at this thing. But one thing that was sad about the situation that Danielle had shared, of course, we only have her side of the story, was that she did try to have an attempt, because I think Andy had asked about, was there kind of any other attempts or something to that extent, beforehand. And she did say, yeah, it is like we're getting warm in here. I got all the lights on, it's warm. But anyways, she says, yeah, I did try to send a sweater that I got for their daughter because they had a little girl. And how sad, right? Danielle has a little girl. They could be cousins playing together and just, it's just so sad. The estrangement is so sad, but it's so real in so many families, unfortunately. And apparently they sent it back. And so I know that was devastating, right? I felt that, wow. I mean, that's saying everything that you need to know. They ain't interested. And so they don't want your gifts either. So whatever it was, I'm sorry, it just was not that Instagram post. So, or anything associated with it. And of course, when she is asked or challenged about that, do you see anything that you could have done? She right away, Danielle says, no, And she looks up to Margaret and says, hey, Margaret, maybe you could tell me. Right? Because, Margaret has all of the dirt on everybody. Margaret's looking at her like, I don't know anything about this. I don't want any harm for you. And then we go into a little bit more delving about how Danielle acted. Because of course, Danielle, she came in like she was everything and she wasn't taking nobody's stuff. She was kicking butt, taking names, she got your number kind of thing. And then a lot of times you saw her run out in tears or was really, really amped up and upset. And you kind of thought, wow, she's being real sensitive in this moment. And I understand it's a sensitive moment, but it's kind of like giving me a little bit like out of control a little bit. My opinion, my thoughts. Now, Andy was a little surprised too of that he kind of thought, you kind of came in with this certain vigor, and I kind of was surprised at how you reacted to some of the situations. He also references back to Ireland time, and wow, that is a loud FedEx truck. I don't know if y'all can hear it, I can hear. Anyways. Oh gosh, that just got me off my guts. What were we talking about? Danielle, blah, 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 blah. So she's looking for Margaret to tell her what's wrong in her relationship with her brother, as if Margaret would know. Right. And so, she says, look, I didn't want anything harm to be brought to your family. I want you guys to reconcile. Andy does say, look, you did say a couple of things, out in Ireland. That was a little bit, it came across harsh. I personally didn't think it came across harsh. I kind of believe that, Mark came from a good place because Mark said, I was kind to you. And look, Danielle agreed to that. Yeah, you were kind to me, right? And so what was the issue? Well, apparently Danielle had said in many things, but in one moment she said in Ireland that, I can forgive, but I'll never forget. And yes, that is how things are in that arena. So I agree with her. A lot of times that is what it is. If someone hurts you so bad and, it's a situation where it's cause for forgiveness, the formality of forgiveness, that does not mean that you need to then continue to take whatever crap is coming your way from that person or continue in any hurt and pain that they have caused you, right? So the little silly things, you can kind of let things go, right? But anything that's major, big, hurtful, yeah, you probably may forgive, which is a really big, huge step, and it's supposed to be good for you as well. And if you choose to do that, then just don't forget, so that way you don't get yourself back in the same position again, right? So that is a very helpful rule. I totally endorse that, and that's just my thoughts and feelings about it. But Margaret says to her, well, it's that situation that's going to keep you at odds with your brother, right? And of course that just hits too hard to the core to Danielle. She steps up and she leaves. So it may have came out, not really in the right space. At that time, Danielle was already tense about Margaret. She, felt like, Margaret was coming after her in regards to the statement with Laura and the whole, stupid conversation and issue she had with Rachel. So she was really tense anyways about that situation. And that just kind of added fuel to fire. She thought that, hey, Margaret, you hit me where the situation hurt. And why did you do that? And Margaret, she didn't feel that way. She didn't mean to come across that way. She just said, look, I'm trying to tell you. And, it maybe came a little harder than she was able to handle, but that's what it was. So yeah, of course, there was also some back and forth that was attached to that as well. Let's see, because then we move to Danielle and the situation with Melissa and the season finale ball drop moment that they had, which was, of course, a cheating scandal, right? And here we go again with another cheating scandal about Melissa. I said it before. I am so tired of hearing about the cheating situations with her. I think that if there was any truth to that, I don't think Joe would still be married to Melissa. I think Joe and Melissa are very, very happy. But if, let's say, on the off chance there's some truth to this at some point in their marriage, they're together and that's their business, and there we go. And if you can't come up with anything else to talk about that is current, everything's always seems to be years ago, some time ago, someone told me. I mean, I tell you, the telephone grapevine situation over where they are in New Jersey is strong because everybody seems to know about it. Everything Melissa is doing when it comes to that. And it's insane. She's got kids and as well. And at the end of the day, I mean, enough and enough and enough and enough. But that's how I feel about that. So, of course, at that point, they are discussing that. We're discussing, Melissa and how she felt about Danielle, because Melissa, she kind of took Danielle, a little bit under her wing, right? It's just like Margaret did. Margaret said she had offered to help Danielle in her business or whatever else she was doing. Teresa chimed in, obviously, in that moment. It's like, well, yeah, you offered to help me too, but, you didn't do it. And Margaret said, look, you chose not to come, or you stood me up, so therefore there ain't no help for you. Okay. But Danielle does say, look, yeah, Margaret did try to help me, right? So did Melissa as well, because Melissa liked Danielle. She said, look, you were young, you're fresh, and she likes welcoming new people and all this kind of stuff. And quite frankly, I thought Danielle and Melissa would hit it off. I thought they would. And she did take her under wing. She let her come to her store. I can't remember the name of her store. Was it Dash Edit? Something? I don't know. I don't remember. Her boutique, and she had her come over. Envy, that's it. She had her come to the boutique, even allowed her to like a pop-up type of situation, right? If I'm not mistaken, let her do her bougie child's clothing line and bring it over there. So, I mean, there was a budding relationship happening there, right? A budding friendship. And so, I mean, it's just unfortunate how that went down. And of course, Teresa's chiming in as well when she hears about the fact that Melissa is welcoming to new people, because she, I guess, some reason thinks that she's not welcoming to new people, whatever. It was a lot of going on, so I couldn't really make out all of that. Maybe you did. If you heard a couple things in there that you agreed with, disagreed with, drop it down in the comment section. I want to know your thoughts. So yeah, about the the reunion, of course, part 1 right now, because we're going to do part 2 later. But yeah, so she talks about that. Yeah. So Teresa, how she gets really into her words, and Margaret's like, oh, here we go with Teresa again, her tree stomp. And I think what she meant like foot stomping, but she called it tree stomp, right? And of course, what does Teresa do? She goes right to the looks. Tree stomp? Like, I don't look like a tree stomp. Look at you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. She wasn't saying anything about your looks. And even Margaret, and I'm glad Margaret didn't go any further in. She just, I'm talking about the way you look. Like, whew, so it just was a moment that, don't even, because I tell you what, the mixing of the metaphors and this, that, and the other, I'm over that too. It was stupid. It was dumb. And I don't hear no more about it either. So I'm glad that Margaret did not keep going with that. Now, they talk a little bit about that, right? About well, they didn't really get into it too deep about the rumor situation. That's going to come even further, but at least that startup, right? We got us there. Then we moving into the question being asked by an audience member, or somebody from somewhere. How did Danielle feel about the issue with Margaret and Jacqueline? You remember Jackie Schneider, them talking about her and the way she looked, the way she dressed. They didn't care for her attire. I know Jackie was a bit catty about things, and she didn't care for her. I think there was a sense of, something there, right? At the skating party and everything, and yeah, so she wasn't feeling her. too much, and she kind of let it be known. And of course, it was catty. Margaret says, "Yeah, it was catty. And you were trying to be fun, mean or mean spirited, but yeah, I like you. I think you're great because I think that you had a great first season, and you got your endorsements, and then everybody started laughing." And Jennifer Aiden jumps in talking because she just felt that was a dagger for her because apparently she doesn't have any endorsements. And so she jumps right on in, right? And says, I don't need endorsements. I've got this, I've got that. Andy, because she always goes to Andy, Rich, I don't see no endorsements, blah, 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 blah. Of course, Andy has endorsements, right? And so everybody, a couple of them chime in. Yeah, he's got endorsements. He does a very good job at, sharing his endorsements. And she's like, well, look, if the show comes and goes, it doesn't matter because my life will still continue. And I know that was for me. So it was really kind of funny. That whole exchange was kind of funny. But yeah, she wasn't here for the dig on the endorsements, and there was a issue about the endorsement situation and with the tea leaf reader and all that stuff. So that didn't go very well, but it was kind of funny. But yeah, let's see. So again, I talked about the fact that Andy was a little bit surprised at how Danielle handled herself at moments of the situation with, the conversations that Margaret would bring up, or just anybody, and even more so about the idiotic issue about the Laura talking about all these kind of rumors on Margaret. So that was what was going on there, and it was pretty funny. Anyways, so then we are moving on to Melissa, and we're talking about Melissa's home because you all know that Melissa had another home built, and apparently it's supposed to be beautiful. I hope we get a house tour. I love a house tour. I really do enjoy it. I know that she was sharing on social media as things were going and progressing after they moved in, and people had an issue with her light or sconces or something like that, or light fixtures or whatever, and so she changed them out or something that way. I don't know. So I don't know if we're going to get the full gamut, but I really would like to see that because, that's something we used to get before, right? In the beginning, when they moved into a new house, they showed us everything, and I think, that would be fun to see that. But Melissa does share she moved into her new house right before Christmas. And the only two ladies that were there to see her home was Rachel and Margaret. And they both said it was beautiful. Of course, Rachel Fuda, her husband does flooring. He did the flooring. Says Melissa, yeah, she was quite the picky customer. But nevertheless, I would imagine the house is beautiful. I think Melissa has great taste in whatever she's doing at the time and whatever the theme is. She wanted a less vibe than what she had in her previous home, which is a little bit darker with dark woods and dark tones and dark this and dark that. Maybe had more of a different vibe, a casino vibe or something like that, with a lot of flamboyance, but it was still beautiful. I thought, for a theme situation, she did a good job. This one's supposed to be, I guess, more airy, more contemporary, more up to what she may see now when it comes to a more calming space or whatnot. And so I think that's going to be beautiful, and I'm here for it. Then we move on to the public shaming. Oh, no, there was a point too. This was something that came up a couple of years ago or so. I remember they were talking about who moved into what neighborhood between Melissa and Joe and Teresa and I guess Joe Giudice or Giudice at the time. So what ended up happening is that we got another thing that was stated debunked. Okay. I remember there being a lot of conversations that, Melissa moved into Teresa's neighborhood and da 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 da. Apparently that's not what happened. And Teresa confirmed it. She didn't deny that. And she basically said, yeah, they lived here and we lived here. They were 8, we were 16. So apparently the first house that we saw Melissa in, that real big, beautiful, was like a beigey white, nudie color home, was real gorgeous. The very first home they were in, that neighborhood, they apparently lived there first. And Teresa moved into their neighborhood. So that was just one of those things that I'm glad that it was cleared up because I know there was another thing kind of pitted against Melissa, trying to be like Teresa, trying to be doing what Teresa's doing. So I was glad to see that is not something that was something that was debunked and confirmed. And, Teresa would have had her opportunity to say, no, I did move in first, and she didn't. So therefore it was confirmed. Then there was the dreaded question. We're talking about family, right? Rachel apparently had mentioned on the trip, because this is what we're moving into, about Antonia and the relationship between Antonio and the girls with Teresa, and if it's strained, if they're still close, and this, that, and the other. And this was something that was brought up during the Ireland trip when they were on their shuttling back and forth to their events. And Melissa didn't want to get involved because that was the point when she said, I'm not going to be that aunt. You could be that aunt, but I'm not going to be that aunt. Don't say anything about my daughter. Basically, let's not do that. We're not bringing in the kids. We're not doing that, right? And Teresa felt, look, that was a setup question because she didn't mean it to come out the way that it came out. But basically, it was about I think it was Melania's 16th birthday that she did not come. That she used to come to a lot of events, and she doesn't come to so many events. Melissa says, look, your daughters don't come to all of our events either. And that's normal, right? I mean, sometimes you come to things, sometimes you don't. You're not always going to be able to go to every single thing that is set out to do. Sometimes you just get tired, don't feel like it, you got a lot of other commitments. It's okay. There should be some grace given there. But apparently it was an issue. Teresa, of course, she was emphatically about, look, I love Antonio. I am not interested in trying to, make her look bad. And that wasn't her intent. So I'm going to take Teresa at her word at that. It didn't come off right. It didn't come out right, but I'm going to take her at her word. She didn't mean to come that way. And so if that's what she says, and that's what she says, at the end of the day, anything else would just be wrong. Right. So now, of course, they talk about the situation with bringing in the kids. And, I had shared another video that I had did. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was the wedding special live. And I said, sometimes kids need to stay in a kid's place because I don't like the situation between Teresa's kids and their Uncle Joe. I think it's really sad. Okay. He was a very important male figure in their family and their life. And the fact that he's not in there like that is sad to me. And so I feel like, children need to stay in a children's place. No matter how old you are, you need to stay out of that situation. And, some people may not necessarily agree with that. Some people feel like, no, that she was able to say, being Gia and whoever else, say whatever they want to say. And that's fine. No one's saying you can't say what you want to say, but I just don't think that displaying that on social media and on the show was the place to do it. And I really don't. That's my opinion. That's how I feel. At the end of the day, Teresa and Joe, it's their responsibility to keep this stuff between them. Now, obviously, that's not always going to be the case, but they need to do a lot better than what they're doing. I mean, they really do. It's sad, and bringing in the kids and stuff. Now, Antonio, she has been very quiet. Now, Antonio, it's her and her two brothers, and she's the oldest, right? And probably by a few years. So I kind of feel like Antonio's kind of on her own, and I feel bad for her on that because I think at some point Antonio and Melania were super close, and I really like to have seen that continue on. And I feel bad for that situation. Antonio seems like she's probably evolved very much so of quiet, and I can appreciate that, her not coming out and saying anything. I haven't heard anything. If you have, feel free to let us, drop it down, let us know. But at the end of the day, the kids need to stay out of it, right? The kids need to be left out of it. So that was that. There was some moments, I guess, that Melissa and Joe have a podcast or on a podcast, and they were talking about Gia because they felt like Gia and the girls had, basically, snubbed Melissa at certain events, and they did show a flashback, and it was very intense. It was, and now, did they mean it that way? And hate in their heart for her. And I thought that was devastating. And it was devastating to her because I felt like she gulped really hard when she was talking to him because they were so far apart, right? And it was so sad. It was so sad. And so that's what happened there. And there's a lot of stuff going on about things said by both sides on that front. And I'm not going to go through it here for this recap review. But again, if we're not going to bring in the children, don't bring in the children, right? And that should go for both sides. And Melissa was justifying the fact that, hey, we're doing that because they said this and that and the other, and this is how I felt. I personally think she should have just not said that. If she wanted to say it, not say it on the, on the platform, she could have just said it to them. Talk to Teresa, but maybe that's not always so easy to do. But again, just stop bringing up the kids in those situations because that's not helping any. And it's just creating more fractures and more issues between the family. So we're moving on from there. I did appreciate that they did do a flashback of a moment between Melissa, and I do remember this in the season where Melissa and Antonio had a conversation in the car. I remember when she was showing Antonio how to drive, and I thought it was great that she was saying, look, I know that things are going on between me and you, or me, your father, and your Aunt Teresa. I think she goes to Dear Teresa. But we want to make sure that, you guys are not holding grudges, and that, of course, you're going to continue to respect your aunt, and this is between them, right? This is between your father and aunt, and I don't want you to get in the middle of it. I don't want you to feel you need to be in the middle of it, and I just want you to keep that distance from that situation. And I thought that was a very healthy conversation to have, and that's what I'm talking about. It should not be a situation where the kids are being pitted against the other person, and it shouldn't be where, hey, that I'm telling you every single thing that's going on. Some things don't need to be shared. Get a friend, get a thing. You got Louis now, have that conversation with him. You had well, maybe you didn't have other friends. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. The only ones I really knew about was Jacqueline. You had Dolores, but I don't know. Look, people have friends outside the show as well, right? But yeah, that was an unfortunate situation that was going on about that. But I did appreciate Melissa's attempt to get her daughter to understand as well that this has got nothing to do with you, in a very loving way. And I don't want you to feel anything against, her. And the onslaught hadn't even begun yet, I think, on this next gauge of stuff, because I'm sure she's heard some of the other things, right? She's of age now. So that was what we were talking about. Then we clip on to the situation with Jennifer Aiden, and yet another what was it, another rumor or another whatever that Laura says that Margaret says, and it was about, she always talked about that Melissa could have been with a baseball player. Look, anybody could be with anybody else and who you're with, okay? They're having girl talk. It's not a big deal. It was really a laughable situation. Teresa blew it up on the stage. She just, oh my gosh, I wouldn't say that, but yet she says she likes Channing Tatum, and I think that was in part 2 actually. We'll get onto that one later. But again, it was just an issue about that, and look, Teresa was gonna have an issue with Melissa no matter what. It didn't matter. But that being said, Melissa, I was just playing about, the situation about the X thing. I think that was brought up in number 2 either. So let me go back over to Jennifer Aiden, bring up the ball player thing. Yes, Margaret owns up to the fact that she did say that, but it was just laughingly. Melissa's like, I think of her as Dynasty. She's kind of like darling, and says whatever she says about this. She doesn't take it seriously. It was a joke. Whatever the case may is, they think that Melissa, like she said, we were saying Melissa's like J-Lo. If J-Lo could be A-Rod, you could be with a baseball player too. Whatever. It's girlfriend talk, okay? It's just girlfriend talk. So nothing more to say about that. And then, of course, it leads into the situation about Laura coming onto the show and why she wasn't on the show, because Jennifer thought it would be a good idea on her deer in the headlights way to ask Margaret, well, if you guys are such a good friends, why didn't you want her on the show? And then Margaret's like, I did want her on the show. They were trying to go on the show together, apparently. And whatever happened, and it didn't work out for Laura. I don't know why, but Margaret got on. And, so that was, and Andy actually chimed in too, said, yeah, she was trying to have them on they both were trying to be on the show. It was supposed to be a, collective, effort. So yeah, that I guess was some and newfound information for Jennifer. And then we kind of snowball into Melissa again and Teresa chiming in and, talking about, bringing people back on, because I guess it did connect with the fact of bringing Laura on or not bringing Laura on. And Teresa's like, yeah, you guys brought on Melissa. And obviously things were not to the point where Teresa liked it for that to happen. And he's like, no, that's not what happened. And so Jennifer puts Andy, I don't say on the spot, but kind of says, can we just settle this once and for all? Did Melissa, because this has been said many, many times, did Melissa call you guys try to get on the show? He said, I don't have any recollection of that happening. What I recall happening is that we saw them and I thought she was cute. Joe was funny, and they had a staircase just like Teresa. I thought that was interesting. That's what he says. Those are the 2 things that he mentioned. The 2 things, they were funny, cute, and they got a staircase. That was that. There was nothing more than that. He don't remember anything about anybody calling anybody. I think Melissa's been saying that for quite some time. I did not try to get on the show in the way that it was being displayed as she did. But of course, if you're given the opportunity, why wouldn't you take it, right? So yeah, some people probably disagree with it. But again, another situation, I think that was debunked. And I'm glad we're talking about truths coming out. And, maybe sometimes people think, well, it depends on what truth you're talking about. But again, that came out and that was that. So he's put that to rest. So hopefully we won't hear about that anymore, because that's what he said. It's done, is done. So let's see if that can be ended and deaded now. So that does definitely go on. But, Melissa's like, look, you should be grateful, thankful that we're on the show, because of course, Melissa's like, Teresa's like, all the time with the storyline thing, right? Yeah, you got on here and made me your storyline. Well, you know what? fair is fair. They were your storyline too, right? And she's like, look, I had storylines because, of course, Melissa chirps in, hey, look, you should be grateful, thankful that we were on the show. We made you look good, right? We gave you something to deal with. We gave you something to handle, something to take care of, something to stew about, And of course, I'm adding all those ad libs. So basically, you gave her something to work with. And Andy kind of gave a little nod, like, yeah, I mean, you did. And then, of course, Teresa's like, oh, no. You want to go there? We can go there. I had a baby. I went to jail. And I think she started off with, I went to jail first. And then I had a baby. And then Melissa's like, yeah. You went to jail. That's great. We're proud of you. I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. It was just straight chaos. But yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that Melissa and Teresa, they're each other's storylines? I mean, I kind of think that's what it was. I think it was kind of equal footing on that. Or do you think that Melissa's only goal was to destroy Teresa and her happy situation that wasn't so happy home? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. I'd love to know. But yeah, that's basically what gets out. Because like I said, Melissa was here for it. She was not holding back. And yeah, she's like, look, Andy, do you want to go through it? We can go through it. Let's get into it. And Andy's like, no, I really don't want to go back into time. We probably deliberated the situation over and over again. I don't want to talk about it anymore. But she's like, no, we're getting it all out because look at here. I want this done. This is the time. Everything is coming out. So yeah, everything is coming out. So she starts word vomiting. This is Teresa now going off at Melissa, right? Because she's got daggers for Melissa. She's talking about the fact that Jacqueline Loretta, because we're bringing Jacqueline back into the fold, because now, as you know, Jacqueline and Teresa have now reconciled. Now, didn't Teresa drag Jacqueline from one side of New Jersey to another? And then at some point, she decided to pack up and hightail it on to Las Vegas. Now, I'm not saying that the whole reason why they left New Jersey was because of Teresa, but my goodness, it was one of those factors that was a consequence of a lot of things. Because if they were getting along, maybe they would not have left. But here's the case of also raw. I think that Jacqueline might have been from, or somebody in the family is from Las Vegas, but I do believe also too, before Jacqueline had settled in New Jersey with her husband, that she did live in Las Vegas. So I mean, that's what that was. Anyways, so that's where she's at. And all of a sudden, they're cool again. Now, I like Jacqueline, and I appreciated Jacqueline for what she delivered on the show, and I wanted to see her back. As a matter of fact, I asked that question on the Jacqueline Speaks video that I had did. If you have not checked that still video out, go ahead and check it out. I asked that question. I want to know your thoughts too. Do you think Jacqueline will make a comeback? Do you want to see Jacqueline make a comeback? I wouldn't mind not. I would love to see her. I like Jacqueline. I think she was cool, and I like their home. Anyways, so she then starts saying all these things that Jacqueline apparently had said that Melissa said about Teresa, and I mean, she just going in. Of course, Andy's looking at you. It's like, really? You're bringing up Jacqueline? And, Melissa's like, I haven't seen or spoke to Jacqueline like in 10 years. I think is what she said. Something to that reference. And so it just was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. But yeah, she wants it to come out. She is saying that, yeah, it's coming out. And, the the dreaded issue that we cliffhangered off of was the thing that Teresa said about Melissa and Joe having something to do with her going to jail, as if what she did was not the reason why she went to jail. Oh, that was insane that she said that. But she's taking back what she's been saying about Caroline all along. Because you remember she was saying that she thought Caroline was the one that pretty much outed her, got her arrested, and went to jail. Now she's saying that Melissa and Joe were apparently hanging out with Joe Guj or Gudice, whichever one I guess you want to reference, which was an ex-business partner of his, and the one that apparently did not go to jail because he outed Teresa. Now, Teresa saying that. Okay. So everybody's like flabbergasted. Like, are you serious? So now you're saying that Melissa and Joe had something about you going to jail? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. But Teresa is just going for the gusto because, again, Teresa deflects. She redirects. If she's not liking the conversation the way that it's going, she's going to make it go the way she wants to go. She's going to throw a bunch of stuff in there and make you all have to deal with it until something sticks. And we're going to talk about that because as long as we're not talking about what I don't want to talk about, we're good. So the fact that she opened that up, I was just like, enough already. But she did give Caroline the opportunity to now be off of that situation because, she was basically blaming her for everything. So that was insane. Okay. That was absolutely insane. And so that's how the part one ended. And oh my gosh, what are your thoughts? What did you think? How did you feel? What were your roses and your thorns of part one of the Real Housewives of New Jersey? I mean, I am here for it. I will be coming back later on to do the number two, the part two. So if you are new here, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can make sure that you're here for that live. And if you are seeing this in a recap, I hope you go ahead and check that out at that time as well. I mean, this was quite an opening to the reunion, which is what I expected, is what I wanted. I'm so glad it happened, and I am here for it. But I am here, like Melissa says, I'm here for the truth, whether it is or it isn't going to allow them to stay together in happy harmony. At least the truth will be out, whatever that truth may be, I guess. So yeah, again, leave your thoughts in the comment section about the part one. I will be back a little bit later on to cover part two, so I hope you will be here for that. I am so appreciative of you being here for that as well, because hey, look, we've got so much to talk about, and I just really enjoyed this season. I mean, it kind of started off really good for me. I don't know, I really didn't have I don't think I had a lot of complaints about New Jersey. I think that New Jersey was good. I think that I enjoyed it, and it was everything I wanted it to be. And then some, more than what even I could imagine. So that being said, I think at this point, I'm going to bid you adieu. Go ahead and give this video a like. I would so appreciate it. And again, if you are new here, go ahead and hit subscribe, be a part of the family. I would love to have you. And make sure you got that notification bell on so you don't miss any of my videos or my lives. And remember, I will be back for part two. And yeah, at this point, I would bid you adieu. You take care, be safe, and be blessed. And until next time. Bye.